I was a normal child and with three brothers growing up, and during the war I would suggest my life started getting into trouble as a kid during the war, and because my father was in the army, my mother had to look after four boys, and it was a bit difficult. She was working in a munitions factory, and so we came home and we got what food we could, and we went out and obviously was up to mischief, all kinds, breaking into shops and sweet shops mainly as kids. And I eventually was arrested for stealing money from a lodger of a friend of mine's school, and 17 of us got done and we all got fined, and that was my first time in court. I was then arrested for breaking into a home guard shed where they kept the ammunition that's their home guard in case of an invasion. And we took hand grenades and bullets and everything out there. We knew nothing about them. We didn't realise the danger. The police told my mother we could have blown the whole street up, you know. And I went to, with two other boys, went to court, and because I had no parental control, as they put it, I was sent to an approved school. And that's the first time I was ever away from my family. I was about 12 and a half, maybe coming up to 13 then. And I went to a remand home first in Nicholas House, that was in Enfield, and I waited the selection of going to the approved school, and it was St Vincent's approved school, which had originally been in Dartford, Kent, and it was run by Catholic brothers. And I waited about 4 months in the remand home, and I was so pleased to get out of it. I thought I was going to something like utopia, and I was to get a quick shock when I got to St Vincent's, which had been evacuated to Devon because of the bombing. And the V2 and V2 rockets were coming into London in those days, and so we used to sit and watch those while we were in the remand home, the old V2s coming over. And then we went down to London, where it was so peaceful in the country, but it wasn't very peaceful in the approved school. It was horrendous. I've been lucky. My dad had been a boxer, and my grandfather was a boxer of some repute, and I'd learned to box and look after myself. And so, consequently, when they found out I was capable of boxing, the brother Ephraim, who used to be in charge of all physical training, well, that's what they called it, he used to throw a pair of boxing gloves to me and a pair to somebody else, and we'd have to fight to the finish. And it didn't matter what size you were or what size your opponent was, they just threw you in the ring. And so, if you got a reputation, the place was full of blokes that had been evacuated from various big cities, Liverpool, Manchester, Cardiff, Birmingham, Coventry. I eventually went through that place. It was horrendous. As I describe in my book, I had some terrible times in the approved school. I eventually won the Home Office Championship boxing, and my life took on a little bit easier. It was a bit easier for me to live in because of the things that I'd done for the school. I'd become a champion, and so I came out of there when I was 16, and the war just finished at that time. 1945, the war finished. I was just nearly 60. I was about 15 and a half then, and still you couldn't get a job at 15 and a half, because in those days kids left school at 14 actually, and they want to know what you're doing, what you've been doing for the last 18 months. So you couldn't tell them you'd been in a proof school, as you never got a job anyway. So I just used to go around and look for anything. And because I'd become physically strong and I was pretty powerful, I used to hang around in Soho in the days when the girls that were on the game, they used to have, all the American forces were still in London in those days, and they were the clients, and so we'd look to them to make sure that there was no American troublemakers, you know. So I got the odd bump, £5 here, £2 here, you know, and that's how I lived for about 2 years like that, and I become pretty well known in the West End as a tough guy, you know. And I then got a Borstal sentence when I was 17, and I went to Portland Borstal, which again was the toughest Borstal in Britain. And I went through all the procedure. By this time I'd had a reputation. I'd had fights with the staff in Wormwood Scrubs while I was waiting to go to Portland. And you meet people. The funny thing about those days, talking to Frank Fraser, that's the first time I ever heard his name. When I got to Portland, he had just left there, and he apparently had been a bit of a naughty boy himself there.
It's one of the promotions that you had was the cat. Was that at the Borstal? Was that when you?
No, I got the cat o' nine tails in Wandsworth prison. That was when I was 24, 25, and I'd already done the Borstal sentence. I was doing 5 years for hijacking a lorry in Hertfordshire with 2 other chaps, and by that time I had a pretty big reputation in prison. The prison staff didn't like me one bit, and so consequently everything I did was watched, and I had many terms in the punishment block. And people like Fraser, that's when I met Fraser first in Wandsworth, and he was down the block with me on 1 or 2 occasions. But you never saw each other when you was in the block. You walked solitary, walk on your exercise and things like that. All the troublemakers were kept apart. And it was in the mid-50s that I received cat o' nine tails for attacking 4 prison officers in the tailor shop in Wandsworth. After I'd had many beatings in all the prisons I'd been in, I'd nearly died on 2 occasions. And on the occasion that I got the cat o' nine tails, I think they waited 2 or 3 weeks for me to get better, good enough to be able to walk to the office for the visiting magistrates to adjudicate. And that's when I was sentenced to the cat o' nine tails. They don't tell you these sentences, they just tell you, they listen to the evidence, which was all, it was like a kangaroo court, it was one-sided evidence. You were told that your punishment was been recommended to the Home Office, and then 2 weeks later they come and give you a thorough medical. And I was told by another con that had had it years ago, if they look at your back, take your shirt off and look at your back, you can have the cat o' nine tails. If they take your strides down, you're going to have the birch. So I knew then I was going to have the cap. Well, I didn't know anything about the cat o' nine tails. I'd had the birch when I was in St Vincent's, so I knew what that was like, and it was quite, you know, it was pretty horrific, but nothing like the cat o' nine tails. And on the day that they come to tell me, that was when I was officially told I was going to be flogged. On that particular morning, about 12 prison officers opened my door and put a big jacket into me with tapes on, put that round you, and put the slippers on, and follow us, and take me to the laundry where there was you take to the back, the governor and the chief medical officer was there. And these words I always remember: take with the least amount of violence, take this man's upper clothing off and put him on the frame. And the frame was it was like a triangle, and with a canvas in front with a slit. You put your head in that slit, and they buckled your head down, so you could see that way, see in front of you. You could see to the right where the governor and the medical, there was a canvas going down that side, so you couldn't see behind you and you couldn't see to the left of you. And that's where the bloke came out who administered the cap. And so you don't know what's happening. They've already strapped a thing round your kidneys to protect your kidneys, and they put a felt thing round your neck. And so then there's no warning of anything. You hear the box. The first thing you saw, actually, when you walked in, you saw the frame, and next to it was a table, and there was a big square of lint with ointment on it, with tapes on it, and then there was these buckle belts that they put on you, and then there was this box which held the cat o' nine tails. And you heard the clips of that go, and you could hear the swishing of it. And the next thing was you got the first one. Now the bloke that had spoken to me in the out the window, he said to me, the first one really hurts you, but don't worry, after that it hurts you so much, the pain, it numbs your back and you can't feel anything else. Well, I don't know where he got his ideas from, but the second one nearly killed me, and it went on and it got worse and worse. And I went back to the cell afterwards. They left me there, and I could feel something dripping down beside of me, and I thought it was sweat. And I looked and I saw blood, and I'd seen the whole of my chest had been ripped open where it had gone round me, you know what I mean? So, yeah, that was quite a nasty time there.
Frank was very critical of one of the governor's, Governor Lawton. Tell us a bit about him.
Well, any criticism Frank Fraser had about Lawton, it was probably right, because Lawton was probably the most hardest person I'd ever met in authority, and that's in the whole of my life, even up till today. Any time I've spent in prison in recent years, there's nobody like Lawton, ever. There'll never be another Lawton. He couldn't get away with it, but he actually ran that place. And we used to read stories about the Nazis and the Gestapo in the war, and we grew up with that kind of thing. And he was as near to that. I remember him saying to me once, when I was in front of him, and they used to have 3 or 4 screws round you to make sure you couldn't move anyway. And he says, the next time you attack one of my staffs, I'm going to have you killed slowly. And he meant it.
Frank said that he attacked the governor and tried to hang him on a common. Would that be correct?
Well, I don't know anything about that. I've heard the story, but I don't know anybody that ever saw Lawton have any, and I knew nothing about that. I mean, Frank tells a lot of stories about himself, and I think most of the old underworld people and the old lads, they kind of take that with a pinch of salt. The only time I had a confrontation with Lawton, which was quite plotted and planned out, is that after I'd had a severe beating in the punishment block, I came back into the brush shop and I told all the fellas that were, really unhappy about the treatment we were getting. I said, just go in there and the bucket in there, and I'll just do what you can, wee in it, then shit in it, do anything you want. And when it was half full, I couldn't stand it myself. I was waiting for Lawton to come in. When it used to be just like, it was this scenario that went on. Everybody stood to attention. Lawton used to march by, and the chief officer, who was another bully, would walk behind him. And I just walked towards the toilet, picked up this bucket and dumped it on his head. And it was it was the best day of my life when I saw he was literally sick, and the chief, I threw the residue over him, and he just couldn't stand, and nobody could go near anybody. And that to me was the best thing I ever done when I was in